School was kind of a long time ago for me now, but recently I've been learning a lot of new and complicated words, and one of my favorites has been Solarpunk, this awesome environmentalist movement framed with themes of rebellion and utopia. Another one of my new favorite words is Sonder. Here's the official definition. Sonder is the realization that each random passerby is living a life as vivid and complex as your own, populated with their own ambitions, friends, routines, worries, and inherited craziness. An epic story that continues invisibly around you like an anthill sprawling deep underground, with elaborate passageways to thousands of other lives that you'll never know existed, in which you might appear only once, as an extra sipping coffee in the background, as a blur of traffic passing on the highway, as a lighted window at dusk. Sonder is a neologism, an invented word. The same as my village schooling framework. It's made up and was assigned a meaning artificially and intentionally. The author of this word is an artist of a few kinds named John Koenig. I don't know everything about him, but he made a blog where he invented words to capture powerful meanings. You're probably somewhat familiar with this aspect of linguistics. Not every language has a word for everything, like in Japanese, komorebi, the light and shadows you see filtered through leaves on a tree. Complicated words that capture complicated feelings, though there are always things like overmorrow, meaning the day after tomorrow, which are strictly utilitarian. From what I gather, and what I guess, this author became fascinated with capturing feelings through language, and this Sonder word went from new to normal quickly. It might not be common, but it has been adopted into the English vocabulary. The irony here is that I didn't learn this word from the author or his works. I found this word through a song called Departure, made by none other than the producer Sonder. It's a twinkly sort of atmospheric, melancholic but uplifting electronic tune, like a cross between house, lo-fi hip-hop, and electronic. It's a really good song, and to me it captures the feeling perfectly. I want to talk in this video about my favorite social movement, that is Solarpunk, and where I think this other new word, Sonder, can fit in with it. So, speaking more about Solarpunk if you're not familiar, Solarpunk is what happens when you get tired of giving up. Or maybe just tired of doing nothing. Get ready for a bit of a dark tone shift. Climate change is a crisis, and an existential threat, which for many has led them to an existential crisis. I have been hearing about the threat of anthropogenic climate change since I was, 8? I've had almost 2 decades of getting my ear talked off about it. Then I went and became a science teacher, and now I'm uncomfortably familiar with the terrifying empirical reality of it all. It was almost like stages of grief. I look back and can see how my feelings fell into these quantized categories as I grew and changed. From knowing the concrete facts and feeling distant from the problem, to learning its scale, to knowing its economic, social, and historical context, to learning every minute systems interaction and how easy it actually should be to solve, to realizing why it hasn't been solved yet. Yeah, that last stage sucked. And it lasts a long time. I bet for a lot of people it's forever. But I get antsy. I get tired. I went into the 2022 school year pissed. I had to teach environmental science, climate change. An entire generation had passed, the changing of guard. And there I was a decade later about to stand in front of my students as my own teacher once stood and tell them that they're f***ed. We have all these technologies and understand almost perfectly how to fix it, but we don't. Something about money, about laws, about voting, things that we can't control. F*** that. I was so done with it. I decided that every minute of that conversation, of those lessons, should be dominated with filling these kids' minds with every possible solution that there is. Making sure they can't go a day without thinking, wow, it's pretty ridiculous that we still haven't fixed this yet. I wanted to fill empty hands not with torches for burning it all down, and instead with tools for building that better future. And then I found it. I was looking more and more into hydroponics, decentralized agriculture, and photovoltaics, and I found this term, this neologism, called Solarpunk. And the rest is history. It's a few things: an aesthetic, a type of utopia, a form of activism, solar, invoking the nearly spiritual role of the sun, our star, and what it does for our planet, its energy, and how we copy what's happening around us, trying to make use of it for people sustainably. Renewable energy, solar panels, wind turbines, hydroelectric, biogas, geothermal, passive, effective, indigenous, permacultural practices and technologies praise the sun, but it's also punk. It's not enough to mythologize the aesthetic of environmentalism. Plants on some skyscraper are nothing more than corpo greenwashing. We need change. We need movement. We need freedom from rulers, from systems of rule. No kings, only men. The individual and the collective against the authorities, the fascists, the rulers that take what everyone deserves and stand in the way of what could be. I am obsessed. I genuinely, dearly, and intently love Solarpunk. First as a way of informing my own pedagogy, and now my actual praxis. Actually doing something. I'm tired of talking about a problem I can fix, of begging, hoping, and wishing that our rulers and rule writers will solve this for me. If you hate authoritarians, dictators, rule writers, and politicians, charismatic jerks making your decisions for you, against you, and without you, you might be like me. Yeah, you. No, not you. You're a homie. I know you're like me. I mean you, right? You want real freedom, autonomy. You haven't liked a single politician in decades. We know about the Patriot Act. We understand gerrymandering and lobbying, political action committees, money, and the machine, and we're pissed. We see how all the organized energy of traditional government has been used for so much harm. What if that energy were for us? For peace? And if we can start a riot, what can we really do? If we can tear a city down, what can we really do? If we can get the bad guys and crush enemies and cause casualties, if we can start a movement, if we can lift a city up, if we can heal the wounded and feed our families and face history, what can we really do? If governments can organize people and power for so much harm, what could we achieve if we took that power back? That's the thing about tools. They can be used for a lot of things, to destroy or create. What if we used all this energy to build something better? Even language is a tool. Solarpunk isn't prescriptive. Whatever you think it can be, it can't be what's happening right now. I mean, for God's sake, there are states where women don't have bodily freedom in 2024. Things sure as shit aren't good enough yet. Solarpunk isn't that, I am sure. So it trends this way. Governments aren't helping. Whatever they're doing isn't enough, and when it is, it's reluctantly and an exception instead of the rule. I want to talk for a second regarding rules. I want to make it clear that I don't believe in anything antisocial or anti-societal. Rules are great when they're made by you, not rulers. Rulers are people with power, with authority. They're not experts, they're oligarchs. Ancient-ass dudes in suits that have never met you and never intend to. Half of them could disappear and wastewater would still get treated. Trash would still get compacted, traffic lights repaired, everything. Us. All of us who live and contribute and lead without rule. Punk means putting faith in yourself instead of power into the machine. Fairness, equality, and equity. It means without rulers, not rules themselves. So, wait a minute. What does this have to do with Sonder? Well, let's be literal. There are no Solarpunk cities. It's fiction. There are a few communities right now doing exactly what they could be to live both freely and sustainably. There are Solarpunk people and practices and ideas, but those pictures remain trapped squarely within the frame. And well, to me, that's the whole problem. I want this to be a reality. But Solarpunk is anti-capitalist, it's anti-authoritarian, it's so utopian. I mean, it's realistic. The United States is not a democracy. Between the Electoral College, lobbying, voter turnout, propaganda, and campaign finance law, I'll call it a democracy when we're done with representatives. Though, when I talk about representatives, I mean politicians, paid off and far from representing anyone and anything that isn't green and printed on paper. Solarpunk is just devoutedly utopian. A world of communities running autonomously and sustainably without oversight by authorities. Economies that fit on pie charts instead of line graphs. It's resiliently, it's defiantly hopeful. You live in the rot for long enough and get sick of it. Doom gets boring. So if we can wage wars and fund genocides, what can we really do? No, not like that. Don't give up. What can we really do? With all the technology and all the people and all the resources we already have, you're saying I have to wake up at 6 to drive to work to afford my rent so I have a place to sleep so I can work to afford my rent? While people across the world use my tax dollars to kill innocent civilians? If anarchy really is chaos, like so many misunderstand, then who's the dangerous one? Me? Or the rulers killing innocents on the other side of the planet like harbingers of death? To me, Solarpunk is a way. Not forwards or backwards, it's just a way, and a good one. But whenever an optimist, humanist, egalitarian, or altruist cries for utopia, they are quickly put in their place by so-called realists. When another drone dares to stop working or a cog squeaks inside the machine crying, "Hey, what if things were different?" they're met with the same platitudes. People can't be trusted. Evil will always exist. The world can never be fair. Solidarity is a myth. And thus, so often visionaries and normal people alike trip up at that point. They have good ideas, the drive to see them through, to make that solarpunk future a reality. But how will we ever create cultures of cooperation or mutual aid and peace if we aren't all understanding one another? And the answer is Sonder. That feeling of realizing, to an almost frightening and somewhat insidious degree, that everyone you have ever known is as much a person as you. Every choice and moment of their life has been and always will be just as real as yours. So what am I specifically proposing? We need to construct a culture of Sonder in our lives and in our spaces. If we want to make Solarpunk a reality, if we want to make social change of any kind a reality, within the movement and within the greater sphere of influence itself, we must hold Sonder at the center of all our most impacting decisions. Sonder is a feeling that can be taught. It is a feeling that can be learned. It is a feeling that can inform how we build our homes, our neighborhoods, our schools, and our communities, and even our attitudes and mindsets themselves. We can have that better future, but only if first we live with Sonder, with solidarity. I'll take you through a couple of quick examples. Think about an elementary school classroom. One of the biggest focuses for that age group is literacy, reading and writing. But some other more human things are regularly taught as students read. It doesn't happen consistently, and that's part of the problem. But in the US and in some school systems across the world, a lot of time is spent implicitly teaching young children how to have empathy and compassion. They read stories that depict people and characters living their lives, gaining, losing, and growing. To build a better future, time should be spent teaching children that the experiences of others are real and valuable. And this should continue throughout their entire education, formal or not. A cultural expectation for our communities should involve an emphasis on teaching people from a young age that they exist in context of others, and that others' experiences are just as real and impactful as their own. Across the globe, some of this work is already being done. The main issue, though, is that as students age, messages of kindness and cooperation are traded for ones of isolation and competition. So that's one example of how the human affect of a community could be designed to foster Sonder. But how can it manifest outside of ourselves? Well, that leads me to white picket fences, a symbol I know and understand far too well. The nuclear family, the Cold War suburb, the death of third places, and the modern age. In the US, our cities are designed as if people are machines. There exist entire fields, collective academic disciplines concerned with how urban design does or does not effectively support what I now know of as Sonder, the right to the city. Where I live, our cities and neighborhoods are wildly car-centric and toxically isolationistic. You can go months without speaking, or hell, even acknowledging the existence of your own neighbors. In cars, we speed by homelessness without a moment to think or see what's around ourselves. All the businesses nearby are multi-billion-dollar corporations, as mom and pop shops get gentrified out of existence if they were even there to begin with. Honestly, on paper, it feels like our cities and communities, and even small rural towns, are designed, if anything, to prevent Sonder altogether. As if to allot everyone their space and build everyone a wall or fence with which to stay in their lane and keep their attention only to themselves. It's honestly kind of gross and nauseating, but it could be better. We could have towns and cities built for people instead of cars. Homes and streets, city centers, community centers, libraries, makerspaces, and repair cafes made for living, for sharing, for autonomy, for freedom. All of this is a word. It's not mine, though. It's called conviviality. And I deeply recommend you check out pretty much any video by Andrewism here on YouTube for further study. So Sonder could save us, which is actually kind of a contradiction. Sonder, that understanding of others, that understanding of ourselves. Sonder won't save us. We will. You will. I will. Together. Because we know we can. And only if we first know each other. That is Sonder. It's what Solarpunk needs. I'm calling it a necessary tenet for radical social change. It should be placed at the center of communities and movements, digital or otherwise, working towards a better future. Never forget the other. Remember that everyone has a story and everyone takes part in yours. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you would click the subscribe button, possibly the notification bell, like the video if you liked it, talk to me about my ideas in the comments, have discussions amongst yourselves. I'm always down there to chat, and share this video if you think anyone could get value out of it. Have you ever been in a social space that devolves into infighting that doesn't end? How does Sonder fit into that narrative? How does humbling and grounding yourself and others in a belief in others, how does that help?